All right, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Best Practices and Reverse Best Practices for Purchasing Cooperatives. My name is Brian Munson. I am the Business Development and .coop Sales Manager at NCBA CLUSA, and I will be today's moderator. Your webinar today is co-hosted by NCBA CLUSA and two longtime veterans of the purchasing co-op sector, Adam Schwartz of the Cooperative Way and Kevin Higginbotham of the Evergreen Marketing Group. Before we begin today, just a bit of housekeeping for you. Participant phone lines will be muted during this presentation to reduce background noise. If you have a question, please type it into the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel that's on your screen. Questions will be collected and answered as time allows at the end of the program. NCBA CLUSA will be recording this webinar and it will be archived on our website. You will receive an email containing a link to the posted recording early next week. Please feel free to pass it along to others in your co-op or place of business, or simply forward it on to your network. So just a bit quickly about our panelists today. Adam Schwartz is the founder and principal of the Cooperative Way, a consulting firm that is dedicated to assisting cooperative businesses. Adam has served cooperatives from different sectors for 23 years, and this extensive knowledge has provided him a foundation as a consultant to provide strategic guidance to cooperatives, including boards, employees, and members, all that might be seeking to utilize co-op principles and values as a primary force in serving their members in the community. Adam is currently serving as an instructor on cooperative culture at the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association. He also served from 2005 to 2011 as the Vice President for Public Affairs and Member Services at NCBA CLUSA. Adam is a frequent speaker and author on cooperative business, and he has appeared on MSNBC and CNN to promote co-ops as the better business model for economic and social change. Kevin Higginbotham is the Chief Executive Officer of the Evergreen Marketing Group, the leading cooperative of independent construction, industrial tools and supply distributors and manufacturers. Since joining Evergreen in 1995, Kevin has led the group in the development of programs focused on training and education, business development, and partnering. During his tenure, as I mentioned, Kevin has championed a number of educational initiatives at Evergreen, including the establishment of a training center that has educated over 10,000 distributor associates via the Evergreen University program. This is a program where distributor salespeople can become certified tool specialists following the completion of a rigorous continuing education program. He brings more than 30 years of marketing, communications, and management experience to this webinar. He's been a member of the NCBA since 1998. He served on the conference planning committee and or been a speaker or panel moderator at the conference. He was chairman of the planning committee in 2013 and was recently elected to the NCBA board of directors in 2015. So the purpose of today's webinar is to provide a foundation for attendees to participate fully in our best practices and reverse best practices sessions in New Orleans. Both of these sessions are cited year after year by attendees as the reason to attend the conference, as it provides valuable and actionable business intelligence in an open and very comfortable forum. To ensure that everyone's prepared, we want to bring Adam and Kevin to this webinar to give some examples of best and reverse best practices, as well as provide a template for you to fill out at your cooperative in preparation for the event. Our goal is to collect these best practices from all of our attendees in advance and upload them to the thumb drive that you will receive. Having that information at your fingertips will help inform questions during these sessions. It will also help enable connections to your fellow attendees, and it will create a more complete platform for benchmarking with your peers. At the end of this webinar, you'll hear from our keynote speaker, Evan Hackle. He'll share some thoughts on why best practices and reverse best practices and preparing for them should be important to you. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Adam Schwartz, and he'll talk a little bit about best practices. Adam?
Thanks very much, Brian, and it's a pleasure to be with you and Kevin today on this webinar. And so without further ado, just sort of get into what is a best practice. As Brian had mentioned, this conference has been going on for almost 20 years now, and this continually is rated as one of the most important sessions as to the reason why people attend. So quite simply, the idea is to share what is a best practice at your co-op, and thinking about it, you put one chip in and you should be able to take out about 30 chips out. because you'll be getting best practices from a wide group, a variety of different purchasing co-ops around the country. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to elevate this session so that folks can get even more out of this. So what we are hoping to do, and I think, Brian, the next slide will showcase sort of the outline of how we hope that attendees will prepare their best practice so that folks can really get more out of this session. So the first part is creating the category in which your best practice applies, and you can see a couple examples up there on the screen. And then labeling exactly what it is of the best practice, the situation, what it is that you were trying to improve, and how you went about doing that with the solution, what the issue was. And then I think split up on the next screen, yes, given the benefits of it, some key points that folks can keep in mind, and then finally some contact information, because if you're like me, a couple of days after the conference, you'll have another thought or question, and it would be great to be able to know who to contact about getting a little bit more information. And I think the next slide will just showcase us walking through a best practice, and this is an actual best practice that was shared a couple of years ago. And I thought it would make sense to use a good real live example. So this one is in the category of member engagement, and the best practice is creating a member support card. The idea here is that a lot of members of purchasing co-ops and buying groups at times tend to treat their purchasing co-op like any other vendor, simply shopping on the price. And what this is designed to do is to create incentives for the members to encourage greater member loyalty to the co-op and make the organization even more transparent. So the idea is creating a member support card that would showcase to all the other members of the co-op who the best supporters of the co-op are, and to combine this with an awards program that would be done at your annual meeting, letting folks know who the best supporters of the co-op continue to be through their purchasing. And this particular one was designed in such a way so that members at all different size levels could be recognized, so that it's looking at a percentage of your total buy through the co-op. So whether you're a very large member or a small member, you would not be disadvantaged by that. And from benefits standpoint, awards have been around for a very long time. They provide recognition to those who have been supportive of the co-op. Awards also provide inspiration, so that others will aspire to do things that would make them worthy of receiving an award in the future. So this is a well done practice through a number of different co-ops out there, and the idea that for those maybe who have not yet embraced this, it's designed to give you the sort of the lowdown on how to do it. It is suggested that if you're a newer co-op, doing this right from the start, so you sort of build that culture in right from the beginning, makes a lot of sense. But fear not, if you've been around for a while and you haven't yet done this, it can still be implemented at any time in your co-op's existence. And a few ideas are shared on how to do that, working with some well-established members, making sure that you get buy-in from folks, so that's not something just launched out of the central office without making sure that the members are interested and want to do this. And then finally, making sure that you have your contact information. So we're hopeful that as you prepare to attend the conference, that you'll give some thought beforehand as to what your best practice that you'd like to share with others will be in advance, and as Brian mentioned, getting that to him in advance so it can be on the thumb drive. All of the attendees will have, who are from purchasing co-ops, will have the opportunity to verbally discuss their best practice. We ask that you keep those presentations to about 3-4 minutes. I will be moderating that session and will do my best to keep people on track. We'll also invite a few moments of question and answer so we can clarify some things right on the spot and then move on to the next one. But as I say, hopefully by the end of the session, which will be broken into 2 parts on the second day, early morning and then late in the day, everyone will leave with an additional maybe as many as 30 new best practices. So, Brian, why don't I leave it right there? I think that does a good job of the overview, and be happy to take questions once Kevin is done as well.
Thanks,
Great.
Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks,
thank you, Adam.
I
appreciate that. We've got Kevin on the line, Kevin Higginbotham. I'm accidentally talking over him here. Just that's great. So again, as Adam mentioned, we will be taking questions about the best practices at the end after we hear from our keynote speaker. Right now, we're going to hear from Kevin Higginbotham on reverse best practices.
Great, Adam. That was a great description of the best practices, and I love the new approach where we're going to try to document some stuff in advance. I know, having attended the conference, you know, many times over the last 15 years, or most years over the last 15 years, I find myself, you know, really jotting down notes through everybody's presentation, and it's not as efficient as this new system will be. You know, I think it was Thomas Edison who said you learn as much from failure as you do from success, and that's the subject that I get to moderate during the breakfast. I believe it's on Wednesday, which is the reverse best practices. Obviously, not everything we do in business or in the cooperative world works out for us, and so one of the things that we thought would be a good kind of other side of the story was a session on reverse best practices. And so, much like Adam described, the intention here is to identify those areas where it may have even actually been a best practice for another co-op. I know a couple of mine are, and the things that just didn't work out. So we'll have a format in place. Again, like Adam was describing, the first step is what category of activity did this relate to? Was it conferences, finance, some other activity that your co-op engages in? And then really, what did you try to do? And then in the situation area, provide a couple of sentences that pretty much just hits the high points on here's what we tried to accomplish, and then here was the rationale for doing it. Here was kind of like the driving force behind that particular practice. And then obviously you need to talk a bit about implementation. What did you do? How did you try to accomplish this? And where we differ from the best practices area is, why didn't it work for you? And that can be a lot of different reasons. In some cases, it works for another co-op because of their structure, but it doesn't work for yours because of your particular structure. Or perhaps something was botched in implementation. Perhaps you didn't ask enough questions, at the beginning. Reach out to seek some key opinion leaders before trying to implement. So whatever happened that created the issue is really what we're trying to gather at. And then obviously, again, like Adam was describing, provide some contact information. So if someone wants to reach out to you after the conference, they have that information. I'm going to share a best practice that I actually attempted at Evergreen. And it was actually a best practice that was implemented fairly successfully by another co-op, which is why I stole the idea and tried to do it in my world. And that was trying to develop a higher level of member engagement. So the concept that we tried to implement was to create an opportunity for members to co-brand their locations with the overall group. So if you can visualize the individual member store name and logo, and then right next to it is the Evergreen logo, just to try and tie the whole group together. And really the effort there was to try and help our members position themselves as part of a bigger organization to allow them to compete more effectively against their national account competitors. In our world, folks like Fastenal and Hilti are those national account competitors. So we developed, as part of the implementation package, we developed co-branding logos and artwork and signage that could be downloaded for the members to use in implementing this co-branding concept. I actually had my board of directors reach out to individual members via phone calls to kind of talk up the concept. And then we also provided our members a stipend of funds to defray the cost of co-branding. We honestly thought we had all the bases covered. And we thought, well, providing a stipend of funds, having an outreach program by my board, this is going to be a wonderful success. What we failed to think about was those markets where we had multiple member locations. And what we found was members in markets where there were multiple Evergreen member locations did not really want to associate themselves with one of their competitors in that market. So even though we're members of the same co-op, they still compete on a day-to-day basis in the markets. And a lot of members just did not want to do that. We had about 30% of the members embrace the co-op, the co-branding concept, but a vast majority chose not to because of this whole feeling like they're endorsing their competitor members. And so it pretty much died on the vine. And we have some members who are happily co-branding today, and we have most members who do not. And that's a scar I'll carry until I retire. That hey, I tried it, didn't work, but perhaps implemented differently with a different structure, it could work for one of the other co-ops in the room. So once again, the concept here is to look at those things where it didn't quite work out. This is going to be a breakfast meeting that for the reverse best practices. So we'll sit down, we'll let you get started with breakfast, but then we intend to dive right in it. Like Adam was saying, we're looking at about a 3 to 4 minute time per company to describe your reverse best practice and what happened. And we're hoping that we have some opportunity at the end to maybe pick one of the ones or 2 of them or 3 of them and really do a deep dive in, okay, well, what could you have done differently? What could Evergreen have done differently with this co-branding concept? And maybe look for solutions to the reverse best practice that would clean it up and make it a best practice in the future. That's about it. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at the conference this year in New Orleans. It ought to be a great time, and I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Great, thank you, Kevin. As Kevin and Adam mentioned, we do want to stress those the time constraints on there, about 3 to 4 minutes, just so we can keep everything moving and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak. And in reverse best practices, it would be great to take that deep dive. So again, the purpose of this webinar is to hone down and kind of get prepared as best as possible to make those presentations. We will be sending you these templates. All of those that are registered on this webinar, and of course those that are registered for the conference, you'll have those ahead of time with the instructions on exactly how to do all that. Now, very quickly, one of the questions we asked earlier on the agenda, why are these best practices important to you, the reverse best practices, and how should they be used to enhance this conference experience in New Orleans? For that, we do have a short video from our keynote speaker. He was hoping to join this call, but he was called away. So we do have a video. I will play that for you shortly. Just allow me to get things set up on this end.
Presentation is just great. And when we're talking about best practices, that's simply what we're talking about. The way we've always shared best practices is good. Let's now take it to great. Here's the idea. It's really simple. If each of us takes a little bit of time, just a little bit of time, and documents those best practices in a way that someone, even someone in the office that didn't attend the meeting, can read them and understand them, we're all going to benefit. So when you leave this meeting, you leave this meeting with a whole stack of best practices that you can go back to your team, and people can read them and actually understand them because they're explained. Then you guys can decide which ones you want to do, which ones you want to implement, and you're going to have the information to do it. This concept is going to make a huge difference in the benefits that you get from this meeting. The 15 minutes to an hour you might take to write your little piece is going to be multiplied by everyone else doing the same thing. I can tell you from my personal experience, when I go to meetings like this, and everyone shares these quick ideas, I'm sitting there with that piece of paper, and I'm quickly writing them down, next person's going, next person's going, next person's going, and I leave and I can't read my scribble, I can't remember the ideas, I implement basically nothing, and I get very frustrated. I also can tell you, this is also, I think, important, as the person presenting a best practice, I get frustrated because I don't have enough time to really do it justice, to really explain the nuance. So this concept of us taking the time to document our best practice, so that when we all leave, we actually have the tools we need to go back and implement, is going to take us from good to great. And I think it's going to make a big difference. And I want to just end with, I can't wait to see everyone coming up in New Orleans. I think it's going to be a great meeting. I want to congratulate the committee putting it together because you guys are really thinking out of the box. You're pushing the envelope to make this meeting much more meaningful for everyone that attends. Take care and see everyone in New Orleans.
Okay, and that was our keynote presenter, Evan Hackel. Again, he apologizes for not being able to be here, but we want to take this time after Evan's words to take some questions from those that are on the call. It looks like we do have one here in place. It says, will there be a catalog of best practices and reverse best practices available online for organizations to review? What a great resource that would be. I can tell you from the NCBA perspective, this is something that came up with the committee, and that one of the reasons why we're doing this webinar. And we thank Evan for being able to create the template to do this. We do want to make this a resource available for members. We'd have to think long and hard about could it be available to non-members, perhaps for a fee of some kind. But we do want to continue to build our purchasing cooperative library of resources for our members, and that's one of the reasons actually we're looking at this conference, the final session is going to be talking about creating a defined purchasing co-op association. What would the mission of that association be? What would it be structured like? What sort of things would it like to undertake? We've had a lot of ideas, a lot of input from the committee on that. So we will have a facilitated discussion at the end of that. So if you haven't booked a ticket yet, or you haven't signed up to the conference, and you do have the time available, I would make the recommendation that this is a conference that you would want to attend. Kevin or Adam, any other insight on resources or anything like that you might want to provide?
I think the new format with them written down in advance will make a huge difference in what the takeaway will be for the individual conference attendees. Like I said in the past, it is considered to be both sessions are considered to be number 1 and number 2 in terms of what the attendees like most about the conference, and I think we're just stepping it up a bit by giving them something they can take away on that thumb drive to really get their arms around what these best practices are. Anything from you, Adam?
I think did a nice job covering it, and I just really, like Evan said, I really look forward to seeing everyone at the conference. If folks do have a question about how best to prepare, within the format, certainly feel free to reach out to me or to Brian, and we'll help you to get it in the best shape possible. So looking forward to seeing folks. Thanks.
Great. And we do have one more question. In terms of the best practices and reverse best practices, is there anything that shouldn't be brought up? I think it sounds like they might be leery of oversharing about certain things. Maybe it's like business practices or principles, anything like that. What can you guys speak to about what not to share, or kind of the environment in the room that people can expect?
Well, I guess my advice on that is to you can share pretty much anything. I would just not name names. You can kind of disguise some of what you're trying to get at in terms of, particularly on a reverse best practice, something that didn't work, where you just don't embarrass somebody in your organization or somebody who may even actually be in the room. But other than that, I think I'm not aware of any subject that wouldn't make sense from either perspective, either a best practice or a reverse best practice.
Yeah,
Adam?
I would agree. Just the only thing I would add to that is, obviously, if it's a situation, let's say, involving personnel, or we've had discussions in the past about healthcare coverage and things like that. So obviously, you don't want to name names, I think, as Kevin said. But I think that any sort of topic that you're dealing with as an executive or purchasing co-op is fair game. And chances are, if you're dealing with it, other folks in the room are too. So I'd say everything is open, but just using good judgment. If you have to redact any sort of names or potential figures or something like that, that might give away someone's identity if it's prudent not to share that kind of information.
Great. Well, it looks like we do not have any further questions. It looks like we've answered them all. So just in closing, I wanted to thank everybody for attending the webinar today. A special thanks to Adam and Kevin for joining us live, and of course to Evan for joining us via video. We appreciate your preparation for this informative session today. For all the attendees, the webinar has been recorded, and it will be posted on our website in the agenda area of the conference, and also under the webinars area. And we'll send you a direct link to the recording that you can view shortly. If you're looking for more information about the National Purchasing Cooperatives Conference or just simply membership with NCBA, you can always contact me, Brian Munson. My email is bmunson, M-U-N-S-O-N, @ncba.coop, and I'd be happy to send you some additional details about the meeting, any questions on .coop or the co-op mark in terms of cooperative identity. I'm also happy to answer those as well. I'm looking forward to a great conference with everybody in New Orleans. We've got a lot of great exhibitors lined up. As Adam and Kevin mentioned, the committee has worked very hard on honing down exactly on the member engagement piece of the challenges that purchasing co-ops experience. That was a big feedback to us that we heard was member engagement. So we really focused on building out the session to reflect that. We've got a lot of opportunities for networking, both with your peers and with exhibitors, and all the speakers there have a wealth of knowledge, so we encourage everybody to come prepared to talk and ask questions and just be engaged. Again, thank you to our panelists, and we are going to end the webinar now. If you have any other questions, please email me, and thank you for your time.